A couple of years ago, I read a book called Micro. You might not know it, but it was made by Michael Crichton, the same guy who wrote Jurassic Park. Yes, I read books. Stone me. It's about a couple of students being shrunk and dropped in a jungle and they have to survive. Does that ring a bell? There's also some stuff about a murder cover up. It's a lot more violent, with people being dismembered by ants. A guy gets bitten by a spider and explodes because of the amount of poison injected. There's a guy that loses his arm at some point because of a parasitic wasp. You know, just another day for the insect kingdom. But that's all besides the point. This game is that book. The Wikipedia page for Grounded says it was inspired by A Bug's Life for some reason, and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. But I think something's not adding up here, because these two stories are extremely similar. Once you read it, there are things that I can't help but think were pitched by someone who has read Micro. Anyways, I don't really want to start off a video with borderline plagiarism allegations. They are still different in very many ways. I do recommend the book though, it's a really good read. Grounded has been on my radar for quite a while now, because it's a game that on paper sounds like it was made for me. A game about being shrunk to insect size is like both a dream and a nightmare for someone who their entire life has loved biology and is therefore now studying it. I love the idea so much in the book that I immediately wanted it in game format. And Grounded is exactly that. But for some inexplicable reason, I never played it. All I know is that I finally tried it, and I want to talk about my experience. Also a warning, this video contains me with a haircut, which means I look weirdly naked sometimes. Also, before anyone thinks that, it's not a review, it's just, I don't know what it is, but it's not that. I'll give my opinion on stuff, sure, but it's more about the emotional aspects, I guess. That's not really right either. I'll try to explain somewhere in the video exactly what I mean. Maybe, if I feel like it. In the meantime, just enjoy whatever random shit I'm talking about. Crowden? Grounded starts off with a fun cutscene and a suitcase with a parachute. Exiting this suitcase gives you a weird sense of almost childlike wonder. It's immediately apparent that this game is beautiful. It's a completely different way of looking at an everyday thing. It's really peaceful too, for now. And I wish it went on a little longer than that, because it's immediately disrupted by some kind of signal that you'll hear many times. And unfortunately, right off the bat, that's a little complaint I have. The game says a lot of things, and I wish it had a more natural way of explaining them and guiding you. Unnatural, how ironic. The game holds your hand a lot is what I'm trying to say. And it doesn't really let go for a long time. Grounded needs a way to get the gameplay going and get the story going, but that's not really an easy thing to do in a game where you can go everywhere. But it takes it a lot further than what's reasonable. I mean, look at this objective. Explore your surroundings. It is damn near impressive if you don't explore your surroundings first thing when you enter a game. It's not necessary at all to spell it out for you like this. It would be a lot better if they just didn't tell you that. And maybe, if necessary, even prevented you from exiting the intended path by raising the dirt around it or something for just a little bit until you get to the first research station. That's all they had to do. It would have prevented situations like this, where my character literally tells me, "This is a logical conclusion to make," even though I still told you and acted like you were a 7-year-old. It would have greatly improved the immersion in the beginning. That is such an important part. Because to me at least, it feels uncomfortable to go and explore. It feels like you're waiting for some downtime, and then you can go and explore. That's something I feel every single time an exploring centered game has these kinds of quest markers that are in your face all the time. finding a way to naturally guide the player to the place you want them to go is like an art form. From that research station, it feels right to go to this machine. It feels right to press this button. They don't need an objective. It makes sense that if one of the three lasers doesn't work, you need to go and fix it. From that, it makes sense to go back and try the machine again. It makes sense to go check out the impact it had on the place it hit the tree. For some reason, it still explicitly tells you all of this. The only use of this is if you've taken a break, but other than that, it's completely unnecessary to me. I don't really get it. It's not really that big of a deal. I make it sound like I'm somewhat upset, but I barely even noticed it at this point. It is, however, something that became more noticeable throughout the game, so in hindsight, the beginning could have used that same improvement. Anyways, while you're doing all that, there are a lot of fun creatures to encounter, from some friendly ladybugs to a certain less friendly creature. So like I said, I study biology. And here's some proof that studying biology makes you the biggest, no-life, molten-brained person on the planet.
A common example of the Formicidae family.
Where? I know that's an ant. Where is the... Oh, there's the ant. This guy's speaking in riddles, but I can actually understand what he's saying. And that's a problem, probably. That clip deserves one thing and one thing only. And this feels about the right time to mention that insects are my specialty. All the insects and most other creepy crawlies in this game that I could realistically find here in Belgium, I can genuinely yap hours about. That's why I'm also making a second video on Grounded, where I talk about how Grounded is simultaneously really realistic and extremely unrealistic in the way it represents nature and biodiversity in a garden. That's for those who find that interesting. On the other hand, I found Detective Weevil, who was just doing his own thing. Right, so basically what's happening now is you press this button and this particular laser sucks, so you have to go and investigate it. First I thought it didn't work because there was this feather and piece of grass in the way, but that turned out to be a complete coincidence, so that was a waste of time. Once you get to the laser, you find out that its cables are absolutely covered with red mites, and you have to fight them off. That doesn't take too long, so afterwards I decided to climb up this cable. And I'll tell you what, from up here, this game is really quite pretty. This game has the perfect art style for its setting. If you would make the game too realistic, it just wouldn't work as well. But if it was too cartoony, it wouldn't work either. Right now, Grounded has the perfect balance. It's warm and inviting, but it's also scary and authentic at times. And if you want to make a game about the insect kingdom, which evidently is one of the most ruthless and terrifying places on this earth, that is something that you cannot miss. Because that's what makes this world so intriguing. It's not just the idea of being tiny, but the idea of entering a hostile world which looked so peaceful from above. Or harmless to you at least. I can guarantee you that some insects perish in the most agonizingly nightmarish ways imaginable. Honestly, damn near unfathomable if you don't actively look into it. It's a super fascinating place that I personally cannot get enough from. But at the same time, I would want about anything else than actually having to survive in these conditions. Because you're never safe, and I truly mean never. What I'm trying to say is this garden is like a sanctuary compared to most other biomes and honestly other gardens. Obviously, that's not really something that you want to confront your players with. At the end of the day, it's still a fun survival game, not an educational piece on human privilege. Anyways, after fixing the laser, you activate the machine again and light a tree on fire. This tree is the first true memorable location of Grounded. That's because it is really dangerous, which is to be expected, but trust me, it's really dangerous. A little hole in here. I'm not going in there. We'll get to know the inhabitants on a more personal level soon enough. Inside of this tree is a lab. These labs are part of the story, as they were crafted by the scientist who invented the shrinking technology and ended up shrinking himself. Fun concept, not exactly a new one, but fun. However, you know what's not fun? This robot. I was not gonna say the word, it's just a robot. I absolutely hate this thing. If you've ever played Grounded, I'm sure you can guess why. It just talks so damn much. Anything it wants to say uses on average 3 text bubbles more than it should. The best way I can describe it is exhausting. At some point, you're just sitting there in that lab, doing nothing, being bored out of your mind, because the only thing you want is to leave and do anything other than listen to this robot. Which is quite sad, because the lab is really well made, and it's not like it's just bad dialogue. It's too much dialogue. I'm afraid it goes back to the thing I said earlier with Grounded, just being anything but subtle when trying to get you to go somewhere. It just doesn't know what to do with itself. It has no clue how to get you to find these places on your own. The open world is massive and fun, but apparently that goes with a cost. Having an NPC tell you where to go is not bad or anything, but if it's done like this, I'm honestly not sure which one I'd rather have. But I'm really just rambling on about this, I already made my point, so I'll just stop. Just know I fucking hate this robot that can't shut it. After finally being released from my robotic prison, I decided to go check out this pond. And I think this is a great example of what Grounded does best, allowing for a sense of discovery by making you look at basic things in a new light. All of us probably pass a pond every single day, unless you play World of Warcraft and don't go outside, or you live in a desert, but you'll be surprised with everything that is going on below the surface. It only takes a little bit of water to have a thriving ecosystem. And the game has some really fun examples of creatures that thrive in fresh water. I didn't really explore the water too much because it was also fucking dangerous. As soon as I saw that silky bubble, I knew exactly what was going on, and I didn't want to wait around for confirmation. Also, there's a big fish. The fact that I recognized that bubble to be that of a species of aquatic spider was a pleasant surprise. Now I know I would at least survive that part of being shrunk. Even more surprising, however, is the fact that I saw this little thing swimming in the distance, and somehow I actually found out what it was from that alone on the spot. It looks like a boatsman? Am I tripping, or did that look like... Well, a boatsman doesn't really swim like that, does it? Looking back, I'm really surprised I got it, because it was pretty much not possible to see much of anything from that distance. It might as well have been a beetle from over here. But I coincidentally found a boatsman in real life not too long before this, which explains why my mind went there. Except I'm still kind of wrong, unfortunately. Apparently in English, the name boatsman or lesser boatsman refers to these guys, while boatsman in Dutch refers to these guys. They look largely the same, but in English they're called backswimmers, which is the easiest way to differentiate the two. The backswimmers swim upside down, which explains why I was caught up on the swimming part. I was referring to the Dutch boatsman, which means I technically got it wrong because the English word for boatsman refers to something else. Anyways, that's not relevant. With a quick jump scare on the way back, in the form of the fastest wasp spider this garden has ever seen, I made it back, and with that my first day of playing Grounded was done. And it's safe to say I had my issues, but I enjoyed myself. But I also realized something else. I was not aiming to finish the entire game. It would make sense, wouldn't it, to play a game and finish it, but that's not what this video is about, because it's not a review. That was never my intention either. I realized I wasn't really that interested in the story. I wasn't really bought in. Probably because I vaguely knew where the story was going, but that wasn't really their fault. For me, Grounded kind of feels like Ark. It's a game more about building a base and exploring and surviving, and rather than actually playing the game as a story game. I wasn't really looking for a story game either. And with a game like Ark, it's easy to forget that the story is even a thing. Unfortunately, in Grounded they really shove it in your face. And that was just not at all what I anticipated. But again, I can't fault the game for that, because I came in with false expectations. Grounded feels more like a let's play kind of game. I'll probably finish the story some other time on my own, but at this point, my goal was just to explore what the game had to offer without the pressure of having to finish the entire game. At some point, I'm gonna stop updating you on what I did in the game and just make points. But just know that the part where I stopped talking about what I did is not the part where I stopped playing the game. And that's why I'm not claiming it's a review. The world became significantly more interesting, the immersion absolutely skyrocketed, and it felt more like you were actually fighting for your life. This is what Grounded does best in my opinion, and that makes the story more of a distraction. Why Grounded suffers so much from this compared to other games that do similar things, I have no idea. It's completely fine to say I'm a worthless asshole for thinking this. You're not the first and you certainly won't be the last. But a game that allows for so much freedom also means that I have the freedom to play the game how I want to. That's the beauty of freedom. Contrary to common belief, you don't have to finish a game in order to judge it. Now you definitely have to play it, and if you're actually gonna make a review, you should play the entire thing. But completing the entire game is not always necessary to get the idea. But also, a review goes more into detail on the fun factor of a game, which I've recently realized is completely and utterly useless. By the way, the game is like an A tier on the fun factor to me, so there you go. I care more about the artsiness of a game, if that makes sense. The emotional aspects that transcend a simple review. I care about offering a new perspective, but a vague summary of the game and my experience playing it is necessary in order to bring that. The obnoxious storytelling and objectives take away from the realism, beauty and immersion of the garden. I will obviously still mention the story and do some story stuff, but it's not really the main focus of the video from now on. Now it's more about enjoying and savoring the experience and trying to make points about that rather than the story. I hope that makes sense, somewhat. Another day, another 360-degree turn on Earth. Unfortunately, this particular cycle would not be my best. It's really difficult to find the right words for this day. You know, I'm thinking, an absolute, unfiltered, bloody disaster. I think that about does it. It all started with me not hitting record like a buffoon. Trust me, what I was talking about was mighty interesting, but you'll never know. After that, I quickly got stuck in a death loop where I was just dying over and over again. It was simply agony. All while that was happening, something in my PC kept disconnecting and reconnecting with this awful sound. I finally had enough and went to check it out, and in the process I somehow ended up freezing my webcam, and the thing was still making that sound. And that is precisely the moment I gave up. Now regardless, I did do some stuff, primarily checking out this hedge. My objective pointed me towards this hedge, but I was going there anyways, because I really like the design of it. The entire map of Grounded is absolutely jam-packed with things to do. With a lot of open world maps, I get the idea that they just generated a terrain and then just put things here and there where they think there isn't enough yet. But Grounded feels different. It's possible that it's not different, but at least they did a good job at hiding it. The map here looks like every area is designed as if they're separate levels, and I really appreciate that. Sometimes it can even be a little bit overwhelming because there's so much everywhere. What it also does well is giving you a reason to come back to places you've been before. Maybe there's a cave you're now strong enough to explore, or there could be something you can farm now that you have the right tools. In the beginning it's a little frustrating to feel so limited, but that makes finally coming back all the more satisfying. Again, a little much maybe, but at least you won't run out of things to do anytime soon. And it's also not just everything being placed on the grass and we move on. This frisbee, for example, is stuck in the hedge, which is super clever. I think I can confidently say that in terms of exploration and theming, this is the best survival game out there, only rivaled by Subnautica. That is some pretty high praise. I'm certain Subnautica is a better game overall, although I've never played it, but I will. In terms of a clever theme and fun rewarding exploration, it doesn't get much better than these two. But Grounded has one massive advantage. It's fast. There's no sitting around, there's not many difficult or time-heavy puzzles. That does mean it's not necessarily deep exploration, but the game ends up benefiting from this fast pace, combined with the aforementioned theme. Just walking around, taking in the scenery, getting ambushed by stink bugs, it's all super relaxing and or engaging. There isn't anything I can say is explicitly not fun with exploring, apart from missing the occasional jump. Maybe I didn't get far enough, let's hope that doesn't change. This day started off even worse than last time. I did the hedge lap without recording. Luckily I had already done a little bit the day before, but I only realized it when I stood still for this cool screenshot after doing the hedge lap. The screenshot is really cool though. Unfortunately, that is about 90% of what I did that day. And to top it off, I got the trading card of that fucking trash can. But don't worry, the way back was surprisingly eventful. To make up for a bugged bumblebee I can't show, because I wasn't recording, there is this larva moving without its legs. This is actually a great message about nature. Even in the harshest conditions, nature finds a way to survive. Wow, inspiring. I found this research station, and while I was distracted by mites, I got ambushed by a massive stink bug. But I finally made my way back to the tree, and then probably my favorite clip from my entire time playing Grounded happened.
Great Shelob's ghost!
Oh. Don't turn around. Oh fuck! Now unfortunately I died. Rest in peace. But I respawned in a field station, which just so happened to be the same one with the stink bugs around it. So yeah, that went pretty well. I found my way back to the tree and had another close encounter with a wolf spider. This time I lived and we made it into the lab. But at this point you might be asking yourself, sir, why don't you just fight back? No. I'm nowhere near strong enough to do anything against spiders. Have you seen my gear? It is kind of a limitation I put on myself. I could definitely go farm some items and get better stuff, but nah. I thought it was pretty fun this way. Everything could kill me, and they did. But also the grind is long for some items. Not really at this level probably. I mean, I didn't do it, so I don't really know. But I know there's some really time-consuming grinds, and I don't really feel like it. Instead, I had my trusty spear and club, and I often could stand my own ground. Which brings me to my final point. What's the combat like? And it's not really bad. I thought it was alright at first, but looking into it, it's surprisingly deep. Basically, you can attack, and you can block, and you have to predict when your enemy is going to attack, so you can block. That's not the interesting part. There's different kinds of strengths and weaknesses linked to the kind of weapon you use. Things like slashing, piercing, bludgeoning damage, just like in D&D. Also in D&D there's different damage types, but in Grounded they're based on flavors. These wolf spiders, for example, are weak to spicy. On top of that, there's weak points on some creatures. If you focus things like the eyes or legs with a specific damage type, you get another damage multiplier. So there's actually a surprising amount of strategy and planning that could go into approaching an enemy, and that's pretty damn cool. Not all of these enemies make complete sense, of course. I can see Souring damaging all the robotic enemies, but why a ladybug would be weak to fresh damage is beyond me. Also, is something being weak to generic damage not a little counterintuitive? It's like if a Pokemon was weak to normal type attacks, it's just pathetic. All by all, I think it's a creative way to present weaknesses, and even though it doesn't always make sense, it feels weirdly logical for some odd reason. It shouldn't, but it does. Really weird. Flavors are a lot more potent or something, but honestly I don't know, and before anyone wonders what I mean by that, I'm moving on. So, Grounded, a very interesting game. I had a lot of fun playing Grounded. There's a lot of stuff the game does well, there's a couple of things it does excellent, and there's a couple of things it does mediocre at best. I don't think Grounded is the peak of this concept. There are some ideas here and there that can be improved upon, and can evolve into even better things. This is not the best that Grounded can be in my opinion. Well, luck has it that Grounded 2 has recently released in early access. Now I'm not playing that immediately after this, I haven't even finished this, but I will definitely try it at some point. I want to see what the differences are and what remains the same, and if the game is better overall. At the very least, I'm waiting for the full release. I'm actually a really big fan of the world. Making a game about being shrunk is such a smart idea for a survival game, it's almost criminal that it didn't exist yet. So would I recommend Grounded? Yes. I think it has enough qualities to have a good time, even if open world survival games aren't your thing, and even if you are not obsessed with the insect kingdom to a maddening degree. Maddening for you, I'm just fine with it. I was thinking about how I would improve the game, excluding the things I've already talked about in detail, and the best thing is probably just adding more animals. I don't know much about Grounded 2, but on this art it has a scorpion, so I'm not sure if this is going to be another garden, but if so, I have a couple of fun ideas. Maybe some kind of crab spider. They camouflage themselves in flowers and can maybe guard some crafting materials in the flower and have battles with bees or something. Since moths are a thing, they could easily add some kind of small butterfly. Something like a member of the gossamer butterfly family, who are small and have many species known to visit fields and gardens. There are antlions in the game, but these are only the larvae. For some reason, adult antlions are nowhere to be found. Probably because they're not as flashy or something. Just a thought, not really a serious suggestion. Cicadas would fit really well in Grounded. The green leafhoppers are by far the most common in my garden, but I'm not sure how that translates to the United States. I wanted to look for a really obscure suggestion and came up with the gall wasps. They create these growths on leaves. You could probably find a crafting recipe for that, although I'm not sure how realistic this is because it's not really an approachable suggestion. Something I already vaguely mentioned at some point, you could definitely add a diving beetle. Maybe even a great diving beetle as a boss battle. They are one of the biggest and most spectacular diving beetles you can find after all. Staying on the water theme, it's not far-fetched to add a pond skater. Don't recognize that name? Well, here's all the fucking synonyms on Wikipedia. They use surface tension to stand and skate on water, giving another unique dimension to the water parts of Grounded. Alright, one more, even though I can do this all day. This is probably the most mind-blowing of them all, flies. You could add a composter or something, or you could just put them in the garbage that is already in the game. Right now there are no flies for some reason, which is pretty ridiculous with how common they are in real life. So those are the things I would add, but that's from a perspective of an absolute lunatic. Anyways, that's it then. This is the end of the video. Go play Grounded. It's a good time. I hope you enjoyed, and with that I bid thee farewell.